Good morning, all of you. So we'll start our discussion on the Warner diagram Dillon triangulation. So before that, I'll share the screen. So everybody able to see this white screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So yesterday in last class, we were discussing about this Dillon triangulation and Warner diagram. And we noticed Warner diagram is a dual of Dillon triangulation and Dillon triangulation is a dual of Warner diagram. And both are defined independently. So how to define Dillon triangulation without using the definitional Warner diagram? So if you look at this Warner diagram, so each vertex of the Warner diagram is correspond to a triangle in the Dillon triangulation. That's what we have seen. Yes. Now, if you have a Warner diagram, let's take these 3 points, 3 sides. So this is the Warner diagram corresponding to these 3 sides. So this Warner vertex is corresponding to a triangle in the Dillon triangulation. So the triangle here is these 3 vertices. Okay. Now, if you take a 4 points, yeah, 5. Okay. So you will have a Warner diagram something like this. Yeah, something like this. So here, Dillon triangulation is actually for each vertex there is a triangle. Na? And if you take a circumcircle passing through these 3 points, yeah, these 3 points, okay, this came as an ellipse, but if you okay, see this circle does not contain any other sides in this one. Can we see this one? See, this particular vertex is closer to these 3 sides. All other are far away from this one. So if you take a circle with this as a center and this passes through these 3 points, no other site is inside the circle. Yes, no? Yes?
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
I have a doubt, sir. Not regarding the point which you said, but just regarding the construction. Why didn't we take the perpendicular bisector of the leftmost and rightmost point? Like the triangle making by topmost, leftmost, and rightmost point. For that.
see, I'm not understanding what you're asking actually. You mean to say leftmost is this one,
Yeah,
right? Rightmost
right,
is this one.
and topmost is one more vertex, and the height, and these three will correspond to a triangle, and for this also the circumcenter should be a vertex, uh, like in the diagram which we have made, Voronoi diagram.
Yeah. See, no. See, if you look at this Warner diagram, okay, if you take these 3 points, let's take a different color, okay, these 3 points, and these 3 points form a circle, and there is a circumcenter will be there, a circle passing through these 3 of them. That is true, but this circle contains some other sides in that. Yes, here in this case this circle is empty, there is no other side inside this one. Yes.
Yes, sir, that is clear,
But
sir.
if you take a circumcenter of these 3 points, say this 1 and 2 and 3 here, this triangle, and if you take corresponding circumcircle, so that circumcircle contains other sides in this one. Yes.
Yes, sir.
So that circle is not empty.
Yes, sir, I got that, sir.
So,
Hmm.
so Warner vertices corresponding to a triangle is a Delaunay triangulation such that if you take a circumcircle of those 3 points, the triangle, that will be empty.
Okay, sir.
Okay. So,
Yes.
yeah, unless that condition is satisfied, we cannot take the triangle actually. We cannot have a triangle corresponding to those 3 points, and there cannot be a Warner vertex corresponding to that one in Warner diagram.
Okay, sir, understood, sir.
Okay. So if you look at this property here, corresponding to this Warner vertex, there is a triangle in the Delaunay triangulation. So that triangle, if you take the circle passing through the vertices of triangle, the circumcircle of that triangle is empty. No other point is, no other side is inside that one. Okay. Of course, there are NC3 triangles are there, but only few triangles have this property. Those triangles will be part of the Delaunay triangulation. Are able to follow?
Yes, sir.
So out of all NC3 triangles, triangles whose circumcircles are empty. Empty means there is no other side from this given input is present in that circle, and in that case, the triangle is part of the Delaunay triangulation. So this is the definition of the Delaunay triangulation directly from the point set. So without using the Warner diagram. So what is the property? A triangle formed by 3 points, say Pi, Pj, and Pk, is belongs to Delaunay triangulation if and only if the circumcircle, okay, let's denote by this way, is empty. Okay, so this is the definition directly from the input points. We are not using any property of one. Of course, Warner diagram we are not using it, but there is a one-to-one corresponding properties are there between them, so we can always get a corresponding property in the Warner diagram. Okay. Now, so if you modify this property slightly, and this is the Warner diagram or Delaunay triangulation. So this circle can be viewed, okay, this way also. So this is, for example, this is PI and PJ. So this circle passing through these 2 points. So here this PA, PJ need not be a diameter of the circle. The circle passing through these 2 points, okay, is empty. There's no other point inside this one. Of course, the same circle, but we are treating differently actually. Notation we change slightly. Instead of this rotation, we are saying this. So in this case, this this edge PIPJ belongs to Deligne triangulation. Of course, this one property is divided into 3 sub-properties. So all 3 of them are true. The same circle, and we are using PI, PJ, PK. Okay. So for different things, different edges will be there. Okay. So we can use this property also. So if there exists an empty circle, passing through PIPJ, then this edge belongs to Deligne triangulation. So here this circle is not same as here the circle here. See, if there exists a single empty circle passing through 2 points. So, see, for example, you take this one. For example, you take this edge. Okay. Now you take some circle passing through these 3 points. It's not a circle, looks like circle actually. Okay. So this circle is empty. Okay. So for each and every edge in the Deligne triangulation, there exists some circles, okay, for which the circle is empty. So if at least one is exists, then it's edge in the Deligne triangulation. Suppose if not true, see for example, if you take any other edge, for example, say let's call this a PL. Now let's take edge from PA and PL. So from the diagram, we can say that this edge is not belongs to Deligne triangulation. Okay, so that means actually there is no empty circle passing through these 2 points. Okay, if exists at least one circle which is empty, then this edge present in the Deligne triangulation. If there is no edge present, means if you take any circle passing through these 2 points, there exists a other point. See, for example, if you take this one, so you take this edge, and if you take any circle passing these 2, say for example, this is the circle, and this is say PI and PL. Suppose there exists another point here. Okay, say okay, what does that mean actually? So whatever circle we take, there exists this one point inside. So it is true for each and every this thing. Okay. So what does that mean actually? So there's some points, assume that outside. Okay. Now, so let's try to shrink this circle, okay, inside, so that this is passes through these 3 points. Okay. So basically you make this smaller circle and still make sure that this passes through PI and PL. Shrink further without changing the property that Pi and PL is on this thing. Okay. So if there is some situation comes actually, so if this may go out, before going out, it will be on the boundary. Okay. So at that time, actually, the circle is empty. So this triangle must be in the Warner diagram. This there is a vertex corresponding to this one, which is correspond to Warner diagram. So this is not true. Okay, because this is not possible, because whatever circle you take from these three, okay, there always another point. This will be there. Otherwise, this would have been the part of the Warner diagram. Okay. So from this, actually, what we can say actually is, so if there exists any one circle which is empty passing these two, then that edge belongs to Taylor triangulation. This is the another property of Taylor triangulation, and from which this also we can construct the Taylor triangulation. Of course, computationally we are not bothered about what is computational complexity. Okay. But this is another property. So we can use these properties to show various things. For example, today what I will do actually, I will take this Euclidean minimum spanning tree is subset of Taylor triangulation. How we can prove this? So if you recollect what we discussed in the last class, we have a endpoints are given, and we are using the complete graph on these endpoints, and distance between them is the weight of the edge. So in that complete graph, we want to construct a minimum spanning tree. This is what is called a Euclidean minimum spanning tree, and this Euclidean minimum spanning tree is subgraph of Taylor triangulation. Okay, so we prove this by contradiction, saying that actually this minimum spanning tree is not subset of Taylor triangulation. What does that mean? There exists a edge E which is belongs to Manning's tree, and E is not belongs to Taylor triangulation. If such a condition present, then we can say that actually minimum spanning tree is not subgraph of Taylor triangulation. Yes? Everybody able to follow?
Yes, sir.
So if there exists a one edge which is present in the minimum spanning tree and does not present in the Taylor triangulation, then we can say that okay, this minimum spanning tree is not a subgraph of Taylor triangulation. Okay, let's assume this one. So assume that this is the Pi Pj is this edge, and this is belongs to minimum spanning tree. So if you look at minimum spanning tree, there are some other edges will be there, no? Connected to this one. Okay. Suppose minimum spanning tree say T. From this T, you remove this edge. Okay. So once you remove this one, what will happen? This tree become disconnected. Yes. Okay. Now, once you remove this edge, tree is disconnected, and say let's say this is the left side. One part is T dash, other one is T double dash. Okay. Now look at this edge is not part of the Dillon triangulation. So what does it mean? From the definition of Dillon triangulation, this edge is not part of the Dillon triangulation because there's no any empty circle passing through these two vertices. So whatever circle you are taking passing through these 2 points, so there will be always some point present inside the circle. So what we'll do, we take this circle, okay, where PA PJ is diameter. Okay, so you take this as a diameter and take a circle. So from the definition, this is not belongs to Dillon triangulation, means in this one there exists another point. So let's assume that this point is say PK and PK connected to say T dash. Okay, now you consider this edge. So we have removed this E dash here and we are adding an edge. Okay, PJ, PK. Now again, tree is connected. We got another spanning tree. Yes? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Now, what is the cost of this tree? The new tree, what we got it? The cost of this tree is, okay, the cost of T minus, okay, there's edge length, whatever is edge length of EI. So that is basically length of PI, PJ plus length of PJ, PK. Agree?
Yes, sir.
Is this cost is less than the cost of T or not? So if you look at these two edge lengths, what we can say, so PI PJ is a diameter and PJ PK is a some chord in this circle. So obviously this value is lesser. So the cost of this subtree, whatever cost of the spanning tree, what we got it is less than the cost of the original minimum spanning tree. That means whatever we assume that initially given this minimum spanning tree T, okay, which is a contradiction. So I'm just repeating once again. Okay. So we are saying that actually we want to prove that Euclidean minimum spanning tree is a subgraph of Dillon triangulation. So we use a proof by contradiction, saying that Euclidean minimum spanning tree is not a subgraph of Dillon triangulation. So if we are assuming this one means there exists a one edge, at least one edge, which is belongs to minimum spanning tree and not belongs to Dillon triangulation. If this is happens, then we can say that minimum spanning tree is not a subgraph of Dillon triangulation. So assume that given minimum spanning tree is say T. Okay, so the T is the minimum spanning tree given to us, and this edge E belongs to this T, and this edge is not belongs to Taylor triangulation. So what we'll do, we remove this edge E from this. From the tree. So once you remove this one, tree become disconnected. Okay, and PI is in one part of the tree and PJ will be another part of the tree. Now, this edge is not belongs to Taylor triangulation. That means if you take any circle passing through these 2 points, there always another point inside this one. So what we'll do, we'll take a one circle with Pi, Pj as a diameter. If you take this one, there exists at least one point. So assume that point is Pk, and the Pk is connected to a tree connected to Pi. Okay, here in this case, this I here this edge is present. It may not be present. Actually, edge may be like this also. There may be edge connecting like this. Basically, Pa is connected to part of the tree which is connected to Pi. Pk is connected to Pi. So if you look, the distance between the Pj Pk is always less than the distance between Pi Pj. So this cost of the tree is less than the cost of original minimum spanning tree. Okay, which is a contradiction. So initially we assumed that this is the minimum spanning tree given, but we got another minimum spanning tree which is whose cost is lower than this one, which is a contradiction. So whatever the assumption initially we made, okay, this contradiction is not correct. Okay, so E must be belongs to Taylor triangulation. This is the proof for this. Okay. Okay, so is this clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, there are many other graphs actually. So another is actually closest pair. Maybe this algorithm might be finding the closest pair. Maybe discussing algorithms course. Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, divide and conquer algorithm might be discussed in the algorithm course. Okay. So what is this problem actually? Given endpoints, we want to find out a pair of vertices whose distance is less than the all other pairs. That is what is the closest pair. Okay. So here in this diagram, it looks like this is the closest pair. Okay. So this closest pair, just if we denote this P, this is also subgraph of Taylor triangulation. Of course, there is only one edge. This is all subgraph of Taylor triangulation. Okay. So another thing is nearest neighborhood graph. Okay, nearest neighborhood graph, NNG. So what is nearest neighborhood graph is, for each vertex, you join to its closest neighbor. Okay, for this vertex, closest neighbor, here in this case, both are same. For this closest neighbor, maybe this one. For this closest neighbor, maybe this one. Okay, and this is the closest neighbor of this one, and this is the closest neighbor of this one. For example, if this is the closest neighbor of this one, and for this is the closest neighbor. Nearest neighbor. See, direction I indicated to show that actually which is the closest neighbor of that point. See, for example, if you name them, see, for 1, 2 is the nearest neighbor. For 2, 1 is the nearest neighbor. For 3, Nearest neighbor of 3 is 2. Okay. Nearest neighbor of 4 is 3. Nearest neighbor of 5 is 6. Nearest neighbor of 7 is 6. Nearest neighbor of 6 is 8. Nearest neighbor of 8 is 6. Okay. You got it? Definition?
Yes, sir.
So you are forming a graph such that for each vertex you are connecting to its nearest neighbor. Obviously, there will be n, at most n edges will be there. Okay. So this closest pair is subgraph of nearest neighborhood graph, and which is a subgraph of Taylor triangulation. Okay, just I give a definitions actually. So proofs you can prove in the same manner the way we proved that Venn spanning tree is actually subgraph of this thing. Okay. Next thing is, see, the closest pair is not connected graph. Nearest neighborhood graph is also not connected graph. Okay. From this example, you can see this one. And in fact, actually, you can add one more here. I think actually this is a subgraph of Euclidean Venn spanning tree. Then I define another graph, what is called a relative neighborhood graph. And there's another graph, what is a Gabriel graph. And these are all subgraphs of Taylor triangulation. Okay. Now, relative neighborhood graph and Gabriel graph are defined it here. So, relative neighborhood graph is basically, so your endpoints are given to us. Okay. We join two vertices by a means of edge if there exists a region defined by the two circles. So PI is a circle center and PI PJ is a radius. So if you take this one, okay, this one, and similarly if you take a PJ as a center and PI PJ as a radius, okay. Okay. So this region, if it's empty, okay, we call it the loon between this PI PJ. If it is empty, then this edge PI PJ belongs to relative neighborhood graph. So how are you defining this loon? So loon between PI PJ is as an intersection of two circles with the radius equal to PI PJ, and whose centers are PI and PJ. Okay, we are taking 2 points and we are taking this distance as a radius and PI as a center, and we are taking one circle. Similarly, you're taking the PJ as a center, we are using the same radius. Okay, this is the loon formed by intersection between these two circles. Okay, this region is empty. Okay, and then there is this edge present in the relative neighborhood graph. Okay, and Gabriel graph is defined so the edge between PI PJ belongs to Gabriel graph if this circle PI PJ as a diameter is empty. Okay, if you take a PI PJ as a diameter, And if you draw a circle, if the circle is empty, then this edge is present in the Gable graph. So here we are defining these two graphs by means of some neighborhood relation. Okay, we are defining some region between them as a neighborhood region. If that neighborhood region is empty, then we keep this edge in the graph. Okay, and all other are defined in terms of a distances only, nearest neighbor. Okay, like this. So this is the hierarchy of these graphs. Just have a look at it, all these definitions once again. This is generally don't present in any textbook actually. So you can look at these definitions and yeah, and their properties. And this is the hierarchy of some neighborhood graphs. There are many other graphs also. For example, there's a beta skeletons are there. Then alpha graphs are there. There's a gamma graphs also there. Okay. These are actually the graphs defined in terms of parameter. Okay. Alpha, beta, gamma. And these, depending on the different values of these parameters, you will have a different neighborhood. Okay. Neighborhood changes. Neighborhood here defining a fixed in terms of a intersection of two circles. Here in this case, just a circle. But in this case, we define a neighborhood in terms of this parameter alpha, beta, gamma. So different parameters give different neighborhood and you will get different graphs. For some values of these graphs, also a subgraph of Dellner triangulation. So all these graphs are used in many different places. Okay, wherever you want to study neighborhood properties of your points, so these graphs are used. So there are many applications of using these graphs. Okay, so these are the various graphs of Dellner triangulation. Okay, so I request all of you go through this one. I not covered these things in depth. Okay. Okay. Now, yeah. Now we proceed. We proceed to this construction of the walnut diagram. So earlier the people used to use divide and conquer algorithm to construct the walnut diagram. Okay, whose complex is n log n. So this is the optimal algorithm, but this algorithm is not that easy to implement. Okay, it was, people are actually using this algorithm only as optimal algorithm for many years. Then actually there is a super algorithm came. Okay, I think this may be in 90s maybe. I'm not very sure, 90s. And this algorithm is proposed by Fortune. Okay. Okay. So the Fortune algorithm actually is super algorithm. This is the author is Fortune. Okay. So this is the super algorithm. This is very easy to implement. Okay, but it's slightly little involved in the understanding. So why it is difficult to understand actually is, okay, once I explain actually it becomes easier, but okay, it's once you understood, then it becomes easier to implement. Okay, so it's not a problem here, but coming up with this algorithm is a really challenging actually. Okay, that is the great about this Fortune algorithm. So if you look at this sweep lane algorithm, so we already discussed the sweep lane algorithm for line segment intersection problem. So we have a line segments and we are sweeping a plane from top to bottom. And in the process, we are able to encounter these intersection points while sweeping. And in other words, suppose if you reach a sweep lane here, that means from top to up to this location, all the intersection points, whatever it encountered, those are found and reported. So that means up to this point, we are able to compute the required information for us. Okay. Now look at this Warner diagram. So we try to use the same sweep lane algorithm to construct the Warner diagram. So suppose if these are the sites what we have. Suppose you are sweeping the plane from top to bottom. And suppose you reached up to this position. And if you want to use the sweep lane algorithm similar fashion, so we should compute the entire Warner diagram up to here. Okay. So it is not possible. Why? Because if you look at this simple example, let's take another point here. Okay. So suppose you are sweeping from top to bottom and we reached this position. I mean, we just crossed the vertex of this. Okay. Now, what does it mean actually? We want to compute the entire Warner diagram up to here. But this point, the Warner vertex, is defined by this, this, and this. Okay. We are not at encountered this Warner site, but how we can compute this Warner vertex? We cannot do it. Okay. In other words, this Warner region, top of this Warner region, okay, is a vertex, but this vertex is defined by some site below the current sweep line. So we cannot construct the Warner diagram up to the current position of the sweep line. That is not possible. So everybody able to see this one? Yes? Able to hear me?
Yes, sir.
You got this point?
Sir, one thing is not clear. Why can't we include it while we are taking the bottom point? While we are doing the sweep line, when we'll in future we'll encounter the bottom point, so at that time we can have this point.
No, see here, bottom point means actually say there may be many more points are there below. Okay. This is not the bottommost point here. There may be many points where below the sweep line. But here what I want to say actually is the sweep line is just cross this Warner vertex. Okay. So we cannot identify this Warner vertex without knowing this point, this site. Okay.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. That's clear, sir.
That is the point. So part of the Warner diagram above the sweep line is depends on the sides below this sweep line. You got it?
Yes, sir.
Some part of the Warner diagram above the sweep line, which is depend on the some sides below the sweep line, which are we are not yet encountered. So we cannot construct the Warner diagram up to the current position of the sweep line. So what it leads to, actually, we cannot apply this standard sweep line technique as it is for the construction of the Warner diagram. So that is the observation here, nothing else. You got that point?
Yes, sir.
So, but how we can apply it? So here what we do actually is any part of the Warner diagram which is above the sweep line does not depend on any side below the sweep line. If it is there, so we maintain up to that point only. So sweep line status generally we used to maintain as intersection between the current sweep line and the Warner diagram. That's what we traditional sweep line is thing. But we won't maintain like that. So we maintain the part of the Warner diagram which is above the sweep line, which does not depend on the any side below this one. So up to that point, we construct the Warner diagram. So with this modification, we apply this sweep line algorithm, and we will get a good n log n algorithm. Okay. So we will discuss this algorithm tomorrow, and with this, I'll stop it here. And already you might be seen this your presentation topics, no? So all of you download that lecture notes, whatever is given a link, okay, and see your topic. And we will start the presentations immediately after mid-semester, okay, in the regular classes. Today itself, I will assign slots, and you can look at this updated file. And basically, in each hour, we will have a presentation of 2 groups. So each group will take a 25 minutes. So I request each group should take exactly 25 minutes, not more than that. Because if you take a more than that, next group actually will suffer. So we cannot take a more than 25 minutes. Whatever you present in 25 minutes, that's we should stop it actually. Okay. So maybe you can take 1 or 2 minutes for the questions if anybody is there. Hardly nobody will ask questions actually. So everybody should give a proper presentation with proper preparation, and you have to explain very clearly, very neatly with examples. Example may not be there in the lecture notes. You have to work out and you have to use those examples in explaining. So you don't get any time to draw it while explaining. Whatever explanation you want to give it, you put those all the diagrams, everything in the slides and explain using the slides. Okay. So this is about your presentation. Any questions?
When will the presentation start?
Immediately after mid-semester. Okay, it will be in the regular classes only. I will take few extra lectures, maybe during Saturdays, but during regular weeks, we will have your presentations. Okay. And these presentations are part of your syllabus, and I will ask some questions in the end semester. Okay. Okay. See you tomorrow.